Okay, so let's start with graphing in standard form. So standard form, we know, looks like this. F of x equals 3x squared plus 4x minus 1. And when we graph, before we graph, we need to know what the vertex is. So to find that vertex, we use the formula x equals negative b over 2a. So in this particular problem, we're going to have negative 4. I'm going to change that 4 to a 6 because I want this thing to work out nicely. So we're going to have negative 6 divided by 2 times 3. Negative 6 divided by 6 comes out to be negative 1. So the x value of our vertex is negative 1. So now we're going to take that x value and plug it back into the function. So we'll have f of negative 1 equals 3 times negative 1 squared plus 6 times negative 1 minus 1. When we simplify this, we get negative 1 squared, which is 1. So 3 times 1 is 3. Minus 6 minus 1. That comes out to be negative 4. So the y value of our vertex is negative 4. Once we have our vertex, we also need to recognize our axis of symmetry, which is negative 1. And we also need to know our y-intercept. Well, we've learned that the y-intercept, when using standard form, is the c value. That is the last value, the constant that's part of the function. So negative 1 is also our y-intercept. It's a different negative 1. Understand that. It's on the y-axis, whereas this axis of symmetry is an x value. So now we can graph it. So when we graph it, we first graph our vertex. That's negative 1, negative 4. Once you do your vertex, make sure your axis of symmetry goes through that vertex. That's something some students are having trouble with, knowing where to put the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry always goes through your vertex. And the vertex is just a set of coordinates. Then we move in the x direction first, then the y direction. Alright, so next we use our y-intercept, which is negative 1, to graph another point. So we're going to go down 1. There's our second point. And the third point is just the reflection across the x-axis. Axis of symmetry, that is. So I reflect that. And now I draw my curve. Okay, make it as curved as possible. That looks kind of close to a V, but it was about all I could do. Alright, so there's your curve. So that's standard form. Okay, now let's do one in vertex form. Alright, so we know again what our form looks like. F of x equals 1/3 times x plus 5 squared minus 2. We know that it's vertex form because it's got one set of parentheses that is being squared. That gives it away. That tells you, oh, this is vertex form. All right, so then we find our vertex. Very simple. When in vertex form, and Emporia, this will help for you because you've got to take this quiz. The vertex form immediately gives us our vertex. The vertex x value is the opposite of what's in parentheses. So we would have a negative 5. And then our y value is the number that's outside the parentheses to the right, negative 2. So there's our vertex. The next thing we need to recognize is the axis of symmetry, which is negative 5. Remember, it's the same thing as the x value of the vertex. And then, does this thing open up or down?
Down.
It opens up because 1/3 is positive. It opens up. Now, we forgot to say that on the previous slide. I'm going to go back for a second and just write that in, that we know that this graph opens up because of our a value being positive. So it does open up. All right, so now we can graph this thing. Now notice I did not ask you for the y-intercept because we don't use the y-intercept in vertex form. We use the a value. Use a equals 1/3 as if it were slope. Okay? So then, negative 5, negative 2. Left 5, down 2. There's my vertex. So I'm going to draw my axis of symmetry through my vertex. My second point is determined by the a value. If my a value is 1/3, that's like a slope. So remember, rise over run. Rise 1, run 3. So remember, your rise or your run could be positive or negative. In this case, the rise is 1, so that's positive. So I'm going to, from my vertex, go up 1, and I'm going to run 3. Now, since it's positive, I'm going to run to the right. 1, 3. 1/3. Up 1, right 3. So I do the opposite of that for my reflection. Up 1, left 3. Once I have those points, I can draw my curve. And there it is. Okay. The last form is what we just quizzed over, and that is intercept form. Alright, so when it comes to intercept form, recognizing the form is important. We know that it's intercept form. We know it's intercept form when we have two sets of parentheses. But there could be some instances where we don't have two sets of parentheses. There could just be an x here times another set of parentheses. Well, that's still vertex intercept form because it's as if it were an x minus 0 or x plus 0 instead of just an x. All right, so the first thing we identify is our a value, and that is a 2. The second thing is our first x-intercept, which is p, and that would be the opposite of the first set of parentheses, so that's negative 5. The second intercept is our q value, and that's the opposite of what's in parentheses, the second set of parentheses, so that's a 3. So we identify those three things. Now we formally recognize our intercepts in the form of an ordered pair. So our two x-intercepts are negative 5, 0 and 3, 0. Notice I just bring down the same intercepts, same values that I have. I don't change the signs again. I leave it like I had it. I found those opposite signs to start with, and now I just change it I just bring them down. Don't change anything. Just bring it down into the formal ordered pair. All right, so after we've got our intercepts, we need to find our vertex. To find our vertex, we're going to use a simple formula. That formula is x equals p plus q divided by 2. So I add up -5 plus 3, and I get -2. -2 divided by 2 is -1. Be careful on your arithmetic. We've got people that are missing things because they don't add right. So -1 is our x value. So then to find the y value, you plug it back into your function. I'm going to put it right here. F of -1 equals 2 times -1 plus 5 times -1 minus 3. Alright, so once I've plugged things in, now I can simplify. -1 plus 5 is a 4. -1 minus 3 is a -4. So 4 times -4 is -16. Times 2 is -32. That's going to be a big number. I will not give you any that big. Okay? But I'm still going to write it in right now. So -32 is our y value. Now, it's also going to ask you for your axis of symmetry. The AOS is the same as the x value of the vertex. That's -1. And finally, does this thing open up or down? Up. It opens up because the 2 is the A value, and that's the positive, so it opens up. Now, when I'm graphing this, since I've got this -32, I'm just going to kind of skip some units, if you will. So if this is my graph, I'm going to graph my intercepts first, so -5, left 5 on the x-axis. Remember, your intercepts have to be on the x-axis because they are x-intercepts. And then the right 3. And then since we are going to run out of room for our -32, I'm just going to go down a little ways and call it -32. So I'm just going to put a point right here. I'm going to call that -32. So left 1, down 32. There's my point. Make sure you do your axis of symmetry. And then draw your curve. And so there you have it. Alright. So we will have a test on Wednesday. We will review with a review sheet. It'll look just like the test. That'll be on Tuesday. And hopefully everybody will do very well.